Welcome to the Positive Pen Podcast, where your stories and soul work matters. Now let's dive in. Good afternoon. How is everybody doing? Or it's afternoon for me. And if it's morning for you, good morning. And if it's evening, good evening. And if it's in the between of hours and all that kind of stuff, I hope you're at peace, restful, and all that kind of stuff. I'm John Ronaldo. I am the Positive Pen. On here another episode where we talk about stories, we talk about the soul work, and we talk about the Substack. But reality, it's your writing, your creative life. How you're expressing it, how are you helping others along the way. And I have a very interesting guest today, and someone who's kind of has an impression on me that I thought would be kind of cool to talk about. But before we get into her, there's a couple things I really want to talk about. One thing, we're getting really close to the end of the Substack writers, authors, promoting them. So if you want to go see them, please go to my Substack. You see featured authors, review their books, review their contact, and see if there's anything resonate with you. Please feel free to purchase. It's helping an indie author, especially someone from Substack who is trying to get their feet going and buying their book, or even simply going on there and doing a review, which is a huge thing for everybody. A couple other things. I think if you're following the story about the hospital stay, I think I have one more story coming out this week, or next week. I can't remember. One more story in between, and I'm going to cut that series off and kind of like put it on the shelf. And I don't know if I'm going to write a book about it. I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but it's going to put on the shelf, because really what we're talking about now is maintenance of health, and it's longer term. And what I mean by that is the in-betweens is not as frequent as possible, so they're dragged out. The next phase of my treatment plan is another 3 months of medication. I got released from all stuff, which is great, but so writing more about that, it's kind of hard, and so I'm going to leave that alone and kind of like put that to the side and then let it rest. The Remy's journey, if you're following that, or I think we're on chapter 4, chapter 3, I think chapter 4. I know a lot of people have been asking about that. Does Remy die? The answer is no, but there is several tragedies in his life during that period of time, and they're pretty hard stuff. But something that's the reason why I write Remy's journey is because it really draws in the emotional part of humans. Like, how do we deal with it? And from a dog perspective, how they deal with it. And it's kind of an interesting way to write in it, and it's been kind of cool. But when I was writing this, I always thought about a little girl, like my daughter or something like that, reading this for the first time and understanding how a dog may feel and may relate to it, and kind of like, oh, wow, I was adopted too, or yes, this happened to me, and oh, wow, the dog feels this way, and this is how he kind of dealt with it, or she kind of dealt with it. So I'm more relatable on that. But I try to write these books so it could be talked at story time. So that's really where my mindset is, where a mother or a father wants to sit down and read a decent holistic family value or value driven book. This is one of those things that I do. That's mostly what my writings are about. Other than that, you still get the Mondays. Philosophy Today was a really great day. Wow, we had a lot of interest. Why Substack? Why do we lose subscriptions? And that's been a really good one. I got a lot of questions on that, which is phenomenal. I don't know if we should do a podcast. If we do, I think I might integrate with one of our podcasts that's coming up with our group people, or group of writers coming up. And then we do got a second series of featured authors starting June 1st. It's a whole new set, different people, and that's be out there too. So with that said, that's sort of like my my bulletin boards of things I need to discuss with you all. In the meantime, I'm going to bring on someone who has been, who's an author, who's a doctor, and one of the things that she was that I was really resonated by is the PTSD issues that we have, and I think a lot of us do have them. I know I have them. I get triggered pretty easily on a couple of things, but I think that discussion needs to be talked about, and I can definitely talk about it. But I think it'd be great to bring someone else in, and she does have a book out called "We Were a Nice Normal Family Once." Family, a memory of recovery from CPTSD and the trauma of narcissistic abuse. So, welcome, Patricia. How you doing?
Thank you. I'm doing great. Thank you. And you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Good.
So, let's start off. How did you get on Substack?
Golly, about a year or 2 years ago, I found it and I thought, golly, for writers, that's great. I'm going to get on there and write some stuff and read some stuff. And so I've just kind of continued.
Gotcha. Yeah. So, what is most of your writing about? Is it mostly all trauma, or is it a variety of articles that you write, or is just, or you're honing into one specific area?
It's a variety of articles. I usually put something in when there's something going on in the public, like, for instance, a certain month that's generated, um, especially for certain people. And I put something on like that. Other than that, I usually try to do things that are in the mental health area or the trauma or in the narcissistic, misogynist, that kind of stuff.
Gotcha.
Psychology of that sort of thing.
So, as I was reading your title, and I looked at it now, what does the C stand for? Hyphenated
Complex.
P, complex.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And
can you?
the
Oh, sorry.
difference between complex PTSD and PTSD is that complex PTSD happens over a period of time, and PTSD can be one thing. It can be an accident that
Mhm.
causes it, and you get PTSD from that, or it could be war, or you see somebody shot, or you shoot somebody, or whatever. But complex PTSD is period over time, generally from childhood or from a long period of time that carries over.
So, complex meaning there's multiple events in someone's
Yes,
life that is triggering them, and it could be a variety of things. Like a
yes.
wow, and you were a clinical person, or how did you, or are you just a researcher? What's your role in this field?
Um, well, I'm a doctor of psychology,
Okay.
and my most recent job, I was a um, forensic psychologist, where I worked with people who'd been deemed as not guilty by reason of insanity.
Oh,
And they were a pretty interesting group of guys. I had an all male population, and they were interesting.
can you elaborate, or you're pretty well tight with
Um,
that one?
well, I had one guy that was a doctor. He was an ER doctor, and he
Hmm.
killed his wife with a baseball bat and an axe. And the reason that he did it was because he was depressed. He had serious amount of depression his entire life.
Hmm.
And he was a doctor, but he didn't recognize the depression in himself. So that was rather disturbing. And I had a man who burnt his house down with his family in it. And he was pretty, he had psychosis and psychotic situation and voices and stuff like that. So most of them had some kind of trauma as a child or earlier in their lives as well.
So, Well, I got a lot of questions there. So I'm trying to figure out on the complex, like when you, as a child, what is the most common theme that is really traumatizing for a child? Is it the alcoholic father or mother, or is it just like what is the number one theme in their world that has really triggered them to act out down the road?
I think it depends on the circumstances. Like for me, it was sexual abuse. And I think in a lot of cases, it's sexual abuse a lot more than people realize because every 68 seconds, somebody is um, sexually abused in the United States. And that can be a child or an adult or whatever.
That's that's sad to hear,
Yeah.
honestly.
That was a very strong statistic that I thought, wow, that needs to get out.
Definitely does. You know, how does a child? I guess a child can't figure that out. Like that's a pretty heavy. That's heavy on a child. Like, and I'm sure as a victim, I'm just, I guess from experience, like how did that shape your life down the road?
Well, it was interesting because I didn't think that my family was abnormal in any way, shape, or form. I thought they were normal. And I thought everything was cool. And I thought everybody in their families had some guy in their family, an uncle or a brother-in-law or somebody who was oversexed. And so I didn't learn that wasn't the case until I was 27 years old in therapy. And my therapist said, "You're a statistic. You were you were sexually abused as a child." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I'm a statistic." I was shocked, but
Mhm.
that's where I began to kind of change and get to a point where I recognized that I needed to do a lot of work, and there was a lot of work left to do.
Oh, I bet that's like I said. That's a heavy. That's heavy. I mean, I don't care what anybody says. That's heavy and traumatic, definitely. And was it just sexual abuse, or was there other type of other abuse? Was it just insults or hitting, any of that kind of stuff?
No, there was no hitting or anything like that, but it was abusive in ways that um, weren't obvious. Like, for instance, one night when I was about 5 or 6 years old, we lived out in the country where there's no lights, no street lights or anything like that. And my parents went to town to purchase groceries that day, and they always did this on a Saturday. We got home late on a Saturday, and I had fallen asleep in the car. And when I woke up, everybody was gone. And I'm like, oh my gosh, where is everybody? Why am I here by myself? So I was really scared. I thought the big man's going to get me in, heaven only knows what. But I went into the house and I said, why didn't you wake me up? And they said, oh, we were going to come back out and get you. It was kind of a, oh, yeah, okay. And it's that kind of thing that I remembered. I went away for a summer one time to do some work in a place in Wyoming, and my parents moved and left no forwarding address. And when my sister picked me up at the airport, I said, "So what's going on?" And she says, "Well, you're gonna you're gonna be surprised because mom and dad have moved." I said, "You're kidding? Where did they move to?" And she told me, and she took me to their place. But it's kind of like your parents move and don't tell you where they're going. It just seemed kind of strange to me.
Wow. And outside of that, you lived a normal life. How
Yeah,
old were you then? How old were you then?
I was 16 then.
Oh, 16. Wow. And you had to live with them, right? So you would think that they say, "Hey, we just moved." Was it communication? And like, was it a phone issue? Like, because obviously I'm thinking back in the 1940s or something like that. Uh,
No, it was just I had written them letters and stuff from where I was,
hmm.
and they had written me back, but they just never mentioned that they had moved. I don't know why. They just wrapped up all my stuff and moved it to the new place. And it was kind of strange. I thought
Was it more in town or still in the country?
it was in the country, and I had to go to a different high school. That was my high school senior year.
Oh boy.
So that was very different for me. And it took a lot of getting used to. But I did make the best of it, and I think I came out on top of the idea of it.
Did you, when you walked, like, did you graduate and did you leave the house, or did you stay a little while and kind of figure your life out, or how did that happen after the transition of going from high school to life?
I graduated from high school and I stayed at home for a while, and then I thought, well, I need to go to work someplace, so I decided to go to Denver, and I spent about 3 or 4 months there. And things just weren't working out that well because I had to go. I lived out in Aurora, and I had to go downtown on the bus every day and back every day to work. So I went back home again and stayed with my parents, and everything was fine. It was, normal, as
When
normal could be.
normal as could be. But so at what stage or what point did you start realizing something's off, other than the therapist at 27? Like, was there
Really, that's when it was.
really? Well,
Yeah.
what made you go to the therapist at that time?
Why did I go?
Yeah, what was the reason for going in the
Oh,
first place?
because I was having problems with my husband. And I thought,
Oh,
well, I need to have therapy here, and I need to go find out what's going on. And
hmm.
this was my second husband. And he, of course, he didn't want anything to do with it. He said he was fine. He didn't need any therapy. So, but he was also a narcissistic misogynist. So I had to take that into consideration.
So you were married the first time and that didn't go well, obviously.
Right.
And after that, you got married again. And obviously, you're getting married because of you're trying to fill a void or trying to figure something out.
Yeah. And also at that age, in that time frame, in the 50s, 60s time frame, a woman was expected to get married and have a man by her side, and that was kind of important.
Well, getting
And
divorced is wrong too, right? At that time, it
it
was
was
tough.
what?
Getting divorced during that period of time was a shameful thing.
Right. Right.
So I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt.
Oh, that's okay.
So you were, wow. So you had a lot going on in your 20s in a lot of ways.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of probably your state of mind was probably all over the place. You're probably confused,
Yeah.
not understanding what's happening because you had past trauma and you couldn't relate to that. So your first husband, what was the reason for leaving him?
He was abusive. He was a narcissist. And one of the things that he said to me after we'd been married about 5 years, he said, "Boy, it's really a good thing you're married to me because I don't think there's a lot of guys that would put up with you."
Wow.
I was like, okay.
Wow. Yeah. So, wow. That's, were you like, what was there? Who initiated the divorce? You did, or did he initiate the divorce?
I did. And then he threatened to kill me because he didn't want me to be with anybody else.
Just for the audience, like I was raised in the 60s or in the 70s, so I kind of understand that generation, but I don't think the newer generation really understands that type of level of commitment and marriages and all that kind of stuff. Because today in world, you get married and you can call anybody a narcissist or you can call anybody abusive on so many different merits. And then, it's so loosely tagged, I would say. But back then, what I don't think the I think the younger generation don't really understand that when you were married, you were committed, no matter what, no matter how that works. For a woman to divorce their husband, that you had the cops against you, you had the police against you, you had everything against you. It didn't matter who, even your own family probably was against you during that period of time.
Yeah.
I mean, today world, it's mostly pick your battles, pick your corners, and everybody fights it out and dukes it out in the middle.
Yeah.
Then, when a woman divorced their husband, it was probably the worst thing that person can ever go through. It's probably the hugest. I mean, obviously, divorce in itself is like it's a death, and it's hard to overcome some of the things that you had to be challenged. But then also, if you're abused, it's even worse. And then you had the top of this, the society BS, that the stigma that puts on you. That must have been hard. I mean, I'm just laying it up from my perspective of reading past and being raised in that kind of generation. It must have been hard.
What was really unfortunate was I was on active duty in the military, and I loved it. I made sergeant first class, and I was a great personnel senior sergeant. And I really enjoyed the work, and I enjoyed being in the military. But when this happened, my husband had threatened to kill me. And so I had to go to the commander and tell him, my husband's threatened to kill me. And and I said, I need to get off of active duty so I can save myself and go elsewhere. And he said to me, well, that normally doesn't happen, just so you know. But he said, I'll take it into consideration and I'll let you know. So by the end of the week, he let me know. So I ended up getting off of active duty, which really was a sad situation because I shouldn't have done that. I should have stayed on active duty, said goodbye to my husband and just let it go.
So you were in the so this is even okay. So you're breaking a bunch of barriers here. So
Yeah.
you were in service. Were you serving outside of the United States, or were you just mostly?
No, I was in California.
And what was your role in the military?
I was a personnel senior sergeant.
What
So I
kind?
did personnel for the folks that were on active duty.
Wow, you were taking care of their. Is it 412s? Is it the 412s or the discharge and all that kind of stuff? Is that kind of
Yeah,
stuff? Making sure the record docs were all that. Yeah,
right.
I just made sure Marie's dad. We had a bunch of his documents. He passed last year, and we were trying to collect. Like I actually started to preserve the records because the paperwork was so thin. It was back in the 1950s and 60s, so they were kind of like eroding. So I kind of like I made sure they were a lot better preserved than they were before. Just respect for him and the military service. I can just imagine. So you broke a lot of. You were probably a pioneer in your era, big time, because
Yeah.
that's not heard of back then. Unheard of, because you had a lot of male dominant situations that you were facing, and that's
In the
commendable.
military, I joined the military at age 33,
Mm,
and the maximum was 35. So when I got to basic training, the drill sergeant decided that I was going to be trouble because I was older than the normal person. And so my drill sergeant started to get on me really bad. And afterwards, she apologized and she said, I thought you were going to be trouble, but you weren't. And I'm sorry that I picked on you.
oh, that's so you got divorced from your husband, and how much years? And then you're kind of like off duty. Were you in the? Did you go to the guard and stayed there, or were you just completely gone?
No, I went to Fort Knox, Kentucky,
Mm,
and got a job there. And I wanted to get an education. From the time that I left high school, I wanted to get a college education.
right.
And both of my husbands were like, no, you don't need an education. You don't need to know anything more. And I realized after the fact that the reason they did that was because they didn't want me out amongst people. They didn't want me to meet other people and see what goes on in life. But it took me a while to recognize that. So, um, anyway, they both were against any type of further education. And so what I did, I took some correspondence courses from various universities across the United States, and I added them all up and put them all together. And then when I was married to my second husband, he was reassigned to Germany for 2 years, and we went to Germany, and I got my degree there, my BS degree. And then I came back to the States, and I ended up leaving him because I told him he lived in Tennessee and he wanted to stay in Tennessee. And the people in Tennessee didn't believe in women being in management situations or management duties. So they told me if I wanted to do a program management job, that I had to go and work as a secretary first, and then they would eventually think about putting me into another job. So I said, no, thanks. I'm not interested in that. Excuse me. And I signed up to be a parole officer for the state of Tennessee. And then I had like 3 months to wait to find out whether or not they were going to put me on the register. So I called my handler in St. Louis for
Yeah.
My voice is going. I called my handler and said, do you have any short duty tours? And she says, yeah, we have Camp Edwards and Nova Scotia. And I said, okay, thanks, goodbye. A month later, I called her back and she said the same thing. A month later, I called her back and she said the same thing. And I said, so where's Camp Edwards anyway? And she says, that's on Cape Cod. I said, oh, I'll take that. So I spent the summer in Cape Cod. But when I told my husband that I was going to go to Cape Cod for the summer, he said, okay, don't come back. I said, okay.
And then when did you start therapy? At what point? Where did you start the therapy? At just at the tail end of the marriage, or was in the middle of the beginning of the marriage?
In the middle of it. I had some therapy before during my first husband, and I talked about leaving him at that time, and I didn't end up leaving him at that time. And then as we grew on it, it kind of got progressively worse. So.
Oh, she's back. You're there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Yeah, we lost a little bit of a connection, but you're back. So that's a lot in a span of your adult life, like 10 plus years. So now you're dealing with your divorce. Now, obviously, the therapists are probably males at this time.
Yes.
Commonly favoring men, I would say. And they were advising you to stick it out, or what was their suggestions?
Something that my therapist said to me was, you find different people and then they have they grow into somebody that you don't like. And I said, no, that's not the case. That I can be okay with certain people, but there are certain people that I'm not okay with. So.
Yeah, because that's just going back to my early days in life and remembering women had a role. They had to deal with what they can. But here you are, just forging ahead. I mean, you must have had a lot of resistance in that period of time, and you must have been like thinking, like, what the heck are you guys people talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, at what point did you realize your marriage is over? Was it almost?
The second one,
Yeah.
well, probably 2 years into it, but I realized it was totally over when he said, "Don't come back." I was like, "Okay, that's fine with me," you know. And he says, "Did you hear me?" And I said, "Yeah, I heard you." Kind of like, "So what?" You know. At that point,
Boy, you had yeah, commend you to do that,
thanks.
because most people don't realize. I mean, I'm not saying they don't realize, but the younger generations don't realize what that took for you to do. I mean, just to break that ceiling was probably the hardest thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Now you're in therapy. Did the therapist figure out what you were going on, or did you figure out what was going on in your life, or how did that the
He
aha moment?
figured out what was going on in my life, but then I, I began to learn more about complex PTSD and everything, and learned that um, you looked it up in the dictionary, and there was my picture.
Oh boy. So what made you at what point did you start thinking, I want to go to school now to learn more about this? Because that's obviously your
Oh, that was way back after I graduated from high school. I wanted to go to college
yeah.
and learn all about it, and I ended up getting my bachelor's degree in business administration and in psychology. It was a dual degree. And then I decided, well, I want to get a master's degree in counseling. So I got that. Then I got a master's degree in clinical psychology. And then I went into the doctoral program.
And then when you're going through the process of getting your doctor and all that, obviously you were the test case at the time, your thesis, you were writing your thesis, and you're probably writing about yourself, I'm assuming. Um,
No,
no, you didn't. Oh, wow. Okay. But you were looking for patients that had that similarity, or how did that all click in for you?
no. I was working in a place in Hawaii, and I did basically an outcome type study with the kids that I worked with.
Mm, wow. And those kids had trauma too, or different type of
Yes,
trauma? Okay.
yes, they had a lot of trauma.
And what was the result of what was their trauma? Was it sexual abuse as well, or is it a variety of things?
A lot of them had physical abuse and sexual abuse, different kinds of things that went on. There was one little girl who was, I think she was like 6 or 7 years old, and she liked to go up into the mountain and stick a pig with the knife so she could see it bleed. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I hope I don't have to take care of her. And I didn't. But one boy that I worked with, he was on the cusp, on the spectrum, and he liked to ride the bus. And when I went to his house to get him, his father told me, well, he likes to ride the bus. And I said, well, I have a car. And his father said, well, he likes to ride the bus. I said, oh, okay. So we got on the bus and we rode all over the Honolulu island. And every once in a while, I would notice he would be sitting there and he'd be going like this, and which is a kind of a spectrum sort of thing. It was just kind of borderline, and he was on the spectrum for um, so. But he got better. He got a lot better, and he ended up graduating from high school, and it was great.
Wow. Wow. And then you've been all over the country. Wow, you've been all over too. That's an interesting life too. Like, wow, you had a lot of opportunities to go places and learn. Now, like, when did you start really diving to your world? Was it later in life, or was it more kind of like, was it in pieces as it was coming at you at one time? Because I'm assuming this hit you a big rock, hit you like a big wall, or was it more in pieces?
Well, when my husband said, "Don't come back," I was like, "Well, okay." And so when I went to Cape Cod for the summer, I was like, "Well, this is great." Here I am on Cape Cod for the summer. And I met several people. I met several men who were interested in me. And I thought, well, okay, that's nice. And then this guy came in that was from Fort Drum, and he was a major, and he was assigned to work with the reserve units that came in. And he came in later than the rest of his group, and he started talking to me, and he said, "Hi, how are you?" and all this. And he said, "The group that just came back from here told me to check you out." And I said, "Well, what do you mean, check me out?" I stopped in the middle of the room. I said, "What do you mean, check me out?" He said, "Because you're so efficient." I said, "Okay." Anyway, so what happened was we ended up going to a dinner that night at the officers club. The person that I worked for was a colonel, a full-blooded colonel, and he had wanted me to go with him to the officers club to have crab that night. And I said, okay. But then when this other guy came in, I said, well, listen, we're all going to the club tonight, so why don't you come too? And he said, oh, yeah, I'd love to. And then the colonel said to me, well, don't ask that guy. And I said, I already did. So we all went to dinner with my roommate, who was a captain, a female captain, and her husband, and me, and the major that had come in. His name was Ed, and the colonel. And we sat around this big round table, and we were all talking and telling each other about each other's lives and things. And Ed started making jokes about the what do you call it, cafe, the Roadkill Cafe. And he started making jokes about, Pretty Pooch and, you know, whatever like that. And I started laughing. And the colonel tried to get my attention, and I just kept laughing at this major's jokes. He was just so funny, I couldn't believe it. So anyway, a lot of the people got upset. They said, "Oh, I've heard enough. I'm going to go out now." And they got up and left, and the colonel stayed there, and Ed stayed there, and they both tried to talk to me, and I kept laughing at Ed's jokes. So the colonel says, "Well, I think I'm going to leave." So he got up and left, and so Ed and I stayed together, and we ended up going over into the area where they had dancing, and they had a band. And so we danced, and we got to know each other, and we talked, and we discovered there was a lot of things that were very similar in our situations. He had a marriage that didn't work out. I'd had a couple of marriages that didn't work out. And we were both active duty military. And I could understand what he was talking about when he talked about, the military. And he said he liked that because a lot of people don't just kind of have an open knowledge about what goes on in the military. So anyway, we started to get to know each other. And then 2 weeks later, he had to go back to Fort Drum, which is in upstate New York. So we started to see each other on the weekends. And over a period of time, we got to know each other better. And then I would go up there, or he would come down to Cape Cod, and we would go to movies and different things like that. We'd go to church together. And Then the last Friday, I was supposed to be on Cape Cod. I was supposed to leave the following Monday and drive from Cape Cod back to Tennessee, where I was supposed to be, for the parole department. And the parole department called me on that Friday and they said, "We want you to show up here Monday." And I said, "Well, I can't. I'm on active duty right now." And I said, I can make it the following Monday. But I said, I need time to drive back and, get my stuff together. So I didn't even have a place to live. And he said, "You either show up on Monday or you're not on the register anymore." And that was Tennessee for you. So I said, okay. And I never went back.
So are you, so that started the trigger of, oh, sorry, we lost connection again. Sorry.
Am I back?
Yeah, you're back.
Okay.
So in that world, you started to see, like obviously you're with men. Are you seeing the signs of trauma that every time you're dealing with, because that colonel that basically bounced because he was jealous because Ed was there? I mean, did you start feeling that there was, like, obviously there must have been some type of competition there for you? Like, where did the work start to really hone in that you needed to start working on yourself?
I guess from that point on, I was getting my my master's degrees at the same time, so I was doing a lot of work with the psychology of people and figuring out kind of what went on in my life and how that affected me. So when I got my two degrees, my two master's degrees, that really was kind of a process where I ended up learning a lot about what was going on with me and learning a lot about what goes on with people who have complex PTSD.
How did how did you feel when you started to figure things out? Like, were you just kind of like numbed, or was it more of a shock? Or,
No,
I know
I
that.
was
Go
I
ahead.
was like, "Oh, wow. That's amazing. Look at that."
Everything makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It
Yeah,
was
so
like,
was
"Oh,
the
wow,
neighbor.
this is really great. I'm beginning to figure this out. That's why that happened. That's why this happened. That's
Okay.
why I felt that way. That's
Because
why
in
you
most
behaved
cases,
that way."
or there's the opposite reaction to some of these things, is when you get that moment of truth, which is self-awareness. It's almost like it's a hit. Like, you get hit hard and you're like, wow, I didn't see that coming. And then it was like a reality check, like, that's what's happening. But in your case, it was more of like, oh my God, I can't believe this is it. This is why I feel the way I feel, or I feel like where certain things are happening.
Yeah.
Why? And then you could probably relate to that to all their marriages, because you're picking the wrong guys along the way, because you were trying to replicate what your father, maybe whoever was in your life at the time,
My brother-in-law.
brother-in-law and all that, trying to get that going. And a lot of things were failing, and you're probably taking it personally, but in reality is, you were just messed up. Not to be negative about it, but you were.
Yeah.
And then you took that information. What did you do with it? You just sat there and just kind of like shelved it for a while? Or did you kind of like start thinking, there's a reason behind this, I need to start working on this?
I processed it a lot. And in the courses that I took, I tried to take courses that would, you know, give me more information about that kind of thing, why people do what they do, that sort of thing. And that's why I decided to go for the doctorate in clinical psychology. And that's why I decided to work for the not guilty by reason of insanity, because I wanted to know why. Why do people do what they do? So I'm not sure I figured out the answer to that, but I think
Yeah.
everybody has their own reason.
I'm still trying to figure out why the doctor needed a baseball bat and an axe to finally, that's, I mean, ever came down, you ever thought, did that ever came up when your analysis and said, was
Yeah,
there a
we
reason?
talked about that. I asked him how he felt about it, and he used first he used the baseball bat, then he used the axe to be sure it was done. And I said, "How did you feel when you did that? What was her reaction? How did she behave? And then what did you do?" And he told me, "Well, she just kind of let out a last breath, and that was it." And he says, "I went into the kitchen and I made my son some cereal."
Oh my God, he had a son. Did he
Yeah.
witness it all?
No, he was in bed, I think, at the time.
Wow, that's um, that's pretty harsh.
Hmm.
Um, did that, like, when you started hearing other people's stories, did that kind of like almost validated your stories, or kind of what was your going through your mind when that was happening? Like all of a sudden you hear these crazy stories and you're hearing other people's stories. How did that make you feel?
I guess I felt like I understood what was going on with them. I could make sense of how they were doing things and why they were feeling the way they were because of the things that happened to them in their childhood and later in life.
Hmm.
I think it helped me to process and learn more about myself that way.
Yeah, well, I don't know about murdering your wife and all that helps, but it's just probably the action of getting there. I guess, is that where you're thinking of, or was he, like, how relatable was he to that situation? Like, was it just the process of getting there, or it was just?
He had had he'd had an issue with having everything that he wanted from the time he was a child. He did motocross. He did all kinds of things. He did everything that he wanted to do and a lot of stuff that his parents wanted him to do. And then everybody thought that he was going to go to college to be a doctor. And so he went to college to be a doctor. And he tried to get out of it a couple of different times. He went to Alaska during one time and wanted to work on one of the boats, the Alaskan fishing boats. And I said, "Well, golly, you were really trying to get out of it, weren't you?" He goes, "Yeah, I was. I was trying to get out of it." But the college decided that it was okay for him to go ahead and stay, and they let him back in again. And it was really a sad situation because the college really was responsible for putting him in a situation that he couldn't deal with and he couldn't handle.
Wow. Now, when did you start taking your story and started to apply it to help others?
About 2 years ago, I thought, golly, I think I'll take a course online. And so I found one that was about memoirs, and I thought, oh, okay, I can do that. So I started to write, and I thought, I don't have anything to write about, but I'll just go ahead and write down some stuff. And I started to write down everything, and I looked at it and I thought, wait a minute, I do have something to say here. This is really important because a lot of people have gone through this. I'm not by myself, I'm not alone. And there's a lot of people who've been through the same situation as me, and they need to be aware that they too are okay. There's nothing wrong with them.
Hmm. So I know from my own experiences that I've faced people with PSTD, and I've had that too. There's been some trauma in my life, and I definitely get triggered over a person sometimes. uh, but it's very. I remember going at a call center. We were working for the feds, and It was a veteran call center, and they were doing, I think it was benefits or something like that. I can't remember what it was, but whatever it was a call center. We walked in, we were just doing a site visit, and a soldier, former soldier, basically had enough and he just went a little bit berserk. And the cool thing about this organization is they have safety valves, I would call them, that there's protocols. So if someone does, because that's their intention, was to hire these individuals and try to get them back to some type of normalcy and give them some purpose and kind of give them the education or the counseling they may need, make sure they're on the meds, make sure they were all doing this. Like, that's part of the program.
Right.
And the cool thing was a bunch of his teammates came in, helped him out, figured things out, put him in a safe room, making sure he was working through his things, had a counselor in there going through this stuff. And then from there, they make sure when he got home that people were there, making sure things there. And, I didn't realize how drastic things can get for someone with that type of condition. Did that ever happen to you, where you just went, or was more subtle?
There were times when, with my current husband, who was Ed, the one that I met in Cape Cod.
Oh, I was going to ask you about Ed.
Yeah. There had been times when I've just gotten so angry that, the anger comes out, and I've like gone, put my arm across something, and a whole bunch of stuff goes on the floor. I got a box from Amazon once, and I couldn't get the box out of the box, so I kicked the box across the room. And just some different things like that I've had anger issues that creep up on me, and they're as a result of that. And my husband has been so kind and so thoughtful. He opened the box for me. He put the stuff back on the shelf. He's wonderful.
Yeah, I think that's part of the PS. Well, that's the part of the condition is you get it's not really a trigger. It's an anger issue because you're trying to resolve some of your past,
right?
And they're truly unresolvable, 100%.
Yeah.
And a small trigger of whatever that looks like can take you in a different direction pretty fast. You can go from 0 to 100 really, really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people don't really understand that. And a lot of people carry that, and it's almost hard. I mean, it's a hardly daily thing because you're trying to control yourself. Yeah, it's very, very. So Ed, that's awesome. I do got to ask, did the other two husbands ever reached out after the fact?
No,
they just went away.
Yeah.
Wow.
My first husband tried to make contact with me, I guess 20 or 30 years after, but I didn't engage with him, so there was no contact really.
Yeah. So Ed beat out the Colonel. Kind of. You just said he was funny. He was probably charismatic. You guys communicated a lot. I mean, how important is it in a relationship when someone has the type of condition that you do, is to have that open dialogue and then understanding? Is it just, I mean, and there's not a lot of people can deal with it. I know I wouldn't be able to deal with it because I deal with my own crap. How does that work with you? How does that relationship function?
I don't know. My relationship with my husband is really good. He understands me. He said that while I was writing my memoir, that he felt that it was healing for me to do that, the process of doing that. And he read it after I finished it. He didn't read it before I finished it. When it was in the book format, he read it. That was the first time he read some of the stuff about me that he didn't know.
Yeah. Did he?
So,
Did you sign it at least?
did I what?
Did you sign the book at least?
No, I don't think I did.
Oh, it's funny. Um, and so now your book is out. How is it? How did that writing that book changed you? Was there any change, or was just more of the aha, or kind of like, yeah, that makes sense, or what did it do for you?
Kind of all of the above. It really, I think it helped me a lot. It helped me to really process things a lot and make sense of how things happened and the way they happened and all of that. And the misogyny and the narcissism, things like that, are those things came out while I was writing. I mean, they are what became apparent to me while I was writing. So I didn't know back then that they were narcissistic or misogynist.
So your family. I'm going to go back to the early days. Your mom and dad's relationship, was that ever kind of normal, or it was always kind of odd? How did that materialize as you get older?
It was pretty normal. My father worked two jobs and a farm, so he was gone a lot. But my brother in law, who's the one that I spent more time around, he was there, and that made it difficult because he was the perpetrator, and he created a lot of havoc in the home.
Did you ever address it with him?
No, he's dead now.
And your sister knew nothing about it, or
I think she knew.
hmm,
She just wanted to
forget about it?
look past it.
Damn, that's tough.
Yeah. My other sister, Josie, that I talk about in the book, she was very much abused by this person. And she's passed now. But I wanted to put her in the book and dedicate it to her because she was never able to talk about it or do anything about it. And I don't think she ever forgave him.
Was she the youngest, or were you the youngest? How did
She
that
was
work?
17 months older than I was.
Okay. And there was just the three of you, three daughters, or was there a son involved?
No, there were four daughters.
Four daughters. Wow.
Mhm.
And your parents had known nothing about it. Zero.
They kind of knew that there was something going on, but they didn't exactly,
Figure.
focus on it.
Yeah. Wow. That's yeah. That's too bad. I mean, you didn't speak to your parent. You didn't say nothing to your family at all after all these years. I'm
No,
assuming.
when I was a child, I guess I was about 14, maybe 13 or 14. I, well, several times when I was a child, I decided I was going to do away with myself. And it wasn't because of anything that I thought about. It was just I thought the world would be better off without me. So one time I took some pills and I ended up going in circles around my room trying to pass out. Well, I didn't pass out. So I decided I better tell my parents what I'd done. I did. And they took me to a psychiatrist who didn't speak English. And I didn't say a word to him. And he kept asking me questions, and I couldn't figure out what he was talking about because he had, such a long accent. So, at any rate, he told my parents that what I needed was to have a little bit more fun in my life. I needed a little bit more recreation time and not to be so focused on things.
And somewhat that was a good advice.
Yeah.
In its hindsight, it was a good advice in some ways, but not at the time when you were looking for help.
Yeah.
That's sad. I'm sorry to hear that.
I wanted to tell him about the sexual abuse, but I wasn't sure how I could say it.
Well, you did definitely say it in your book, and that was important. And now it's out there. Uh, do you have relatives and family members from that tree, or is it mostly you right now? And
From the what?
from your family tree, is there others in that family tree that you still have relationships with? Because I'm assuming no.
No, I have a younger sister who's about 10 years younger than me, and I let her know that I was writing this book, and she said, "Why?" And I said, "Because it's important." And she was abused as well by the same person. And I said to her, "Do you not feel that it was important what happened to you?" She goes, "Well, yeah, it was." And I says, "Okay, that's the point. I'm writing about it because everybody has opportunities like that to have bad situations, and they need to know they're not alone." And she says, "Well, I give you credit for doing it." She says, "It's really good." But she says, "I'm not interested in it." So she doesn't, there's no communication at all.
That's tough. Once again, how did he ended up in the house? Was your sister married to him and they lived at the house together, and that's
They
how?
spent more time at the house than they did in their own place. Yeah. Every weekend they would show up, and sometimes during the week. And they didn't live very far away. So he was there constantly. And he was always focusing on me and Josie, and then my younger sister, too, when she got older.
Did he ever get caught, or did he get caught by the police or anything like that down the road about anything?
He got caught by people that he had. His wife called me one time and said that she was really upset because every time he takes a babysitter home, he puts moves on her. And the parent always calls and says, "You can't have my daughter anymore." And so they have to keep finding different people to do babysitting.
Oh boy. I'm surprised none of the dads turn around with a shotgun and look for him. I mean
Yeah.
that that back in those days. Oh,
Yeah.
well,
Really.
actually, even the 60s and 70s could have been. Even today. I mean, I'm surprised,
Yeah.
especially in the woods. Like you're in the middle of nowhere. People took care of themselves.
Yeah.
Hmm. So, with all your research and your history and everything out there, like, if someone's out there, like, and yours, what are the signs to see someone abused in that way? Like, what would be like a trigger to help, or what would be the sign for someone to recognize it?
Well, one of my triggers is when people hug. When people start to hug, I get nervous because I'm like, I don't want to hug people. And so that's kind of a trigger for me. Um, Different ones, I think different people have different triggers that they respond to, and that they react to. I have, I'm hyper vigilant. So if my husband were to walk in the door right now, I go, "Ah!" and he's gotten to the point now where he says, "It's going to be me. So why do you do that?"
Well,
I
that's
think that's another thing, is the hypervigilance.
yeah. So, what would you advise to somebody today if they're going through all this? What would be one of the?
Get some help. Get some professional help.
Mhm.
Talk to people about it. Tell somebody about it. Let let your folks know about it. What's going on?
Right. Hmm. Well, Patricia, it was an honor to have you on. Thank you very much for your
Oh,
time.
thank you.
For those who are looking for her book is. Do you want to name your book again? I'm sorry.
We were a nice, normal family. It's a
Okay.
memoir.
And
It's
it's
a lot.
available. Yeah, and it's available on Amazon. I will put that in the link in the final summary of this
Okay.
podcast.
All right. Thank you.
Um, how else can people reach out to you? You're not practicing still, are you?
No, I have a website that's
Okay.
patriciagrenelle.com,
Okay.
and I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn.
Okay.
Um,
I will make sure I'll add those credentials to the summary, or
okay.
to
Thank you.
at least your website. Um, in the meantime, thank you for everything you did today. I appreciate it. It's not easy to talk about your story. It's probably one of the toughest things to do, especially it's like why am I interested, or why you're interested in my story. But the thing is that you have a very powerful story. There was so many things in there, that I don't think a lot of people really understand the 40s and 50s, especially the 30s, and that was pretty hard times back then. I'll give you an example. I gave my son, he just graduated a couple of weeks ago, and I had a silver $50. I'm a collector, and it 1939. And I gave him the coin, and I said to him, I gave you this coin in of this year, because that year was fundamentally a major change to everything that we see today. But if you keep this coin and you save it, you'll get the rest of it. And like, because no one really understands the 1930s, the 20s. Well, the 20s was a little more wilder, but the 30s and 40s, and because it was really struggling during those periods of time. And war was the only answer to get ourselves out of it, which seems crazy to think that way, but that was true. But for you to go through the 1940s and 1950s, go and join the military, figuring yourself life out, plus all the heck that all the stuff that you were carrying, the suitcases that you were carrying along the way, and the marriages you had, and then being shipped around the world. I mean, that's a lot of. Oh, I lost a connection again. Back?
Yeah.
No, I guess I'm. Are we there? Sorry, it's been disruptive, I guess. I don't know why. But, anyways, thank you very much. Thank you for your time. I
You're
appreciate it, and
welcome.
we'll get you.
Thank you.
And I will make sure your book will be part of the features of authors of Substack. I'll make sure you're part of that group in
Oh,
June.
great.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
And for everybody that's joined us, Deanna, Charlie, Hassan, Original Junior, all these people that joined, thank you for coming on live. And if you've missed it, you will get a recap. It will come back out later this evening. So thank you again, and we'll talk to you next time.